Here's what's coming up on today's show.
So we try to create that trusted advisor network with your CPA, your attorney, and us as your financial advisor, that we're all working together for your benefit.
Welcome to the How Money Works podcast with Craig and Jennifer Moser of Maestro Wealth Advisors, serving you throughout the Triad of North Carolina for more than 30 years.
Guys, let's get into our show a little bit. Questions people ask is going to be our topic. And, before meeting with an advisor for the first time, people maybe Google some questions, or maybe they have a list of their own of things they want to talk about. And so we've got a few things we want to run down and kind of give some, some pros and cons or some highlights for folks to think about, right? So when they come to see you guys for the first time.
Sounds good.
Obviously a big one right now, and it keeps getting kicked down the road by our leaders, is this whole fiduciary conversation and all this various different stuff. So people want to know, what is it, and are you one?
Right. And I think that's the real question, is they know they need to, or they feel like they have to ask, are you a fiduciary? But they don't really know what the nuances are.
Yeah.
Right. So just basically a definition of the fiduciary is someone who manages a person's money and property for their benefit, not for their benefit, but for yours. So it's your, putting you first. And not the advisor first. But let's talk about technically.
But it also seems like, if you are not doing an investment relationship for a commission, sometimes that's the right thing to do because you don't do much. You shouldn't have to pay much. But if you're doing it on a fee-based, it seems like everybody says, well, I'm a fiduciary because I'm doing a fee-based account. That doesn't make you act in my best interest. Right. It
Right.
just says that I'm billing a fee every quarter or every month, whatever I'm doing. And so, hey, I must be a fiduciary.
I do better when you do better.
Right.
But and so technically, I guess from a regulatory standpoint, if you do manage assets for a fee, you can say you're a fiduciary. I mean, that is the standard that you are
being held to. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's not necessarily in your best interest, so to speak, depending upon the type of asset you have. Craig, you alluded to that. If let's say you've got some legacy stock that you're really just sitting there and not wanting to sell, or maybe you rolled stock out of a 401k through a NUA type of arrangement, net unrealized appreciation of that stock, it might not make sense to put it on a fee and be charged on that because you're really not doing it. You're not managing it, right? You're kind of holding it. And the ability to do that would be more of a brokerage type of arrangement with not a fee attached. And that would be, that would be in your best interest, but it's under a brokerage type of commission relationship. And then insurance agents are totally different. If you're just purely insurance related, you don't have that fiduciary standard that you have to adhere to. It's a totally different standard on that. They act in good faith and honesty is their standard, which that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do what's best for you. They're just going to tell you what they know about it, and they're be honest about the product that they're proposing.
Gotcha. Craig, you ever seen that scene in Tommy Boy, that movie Tommy Boy, where he's trying to explain about how buying better brakes, and he's trying to do the whole butcher and a cow sequence, talking about you can get a good information about a cow by talking to your butcher. You ever seen that?
No.
Okay, you need to go watch that, because that'll be an interesting way for you to think about when somebody asks for you to explain what a fiduciary is. So
On Tommy Boy, what's
Tommy
the
Boy.
movie?
It's called Tommy Boy. Yeah,
Duh.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You have to
Tommy
watch
Boy,
that.
the
You can probably just YouTube that, and he doesn't do it right, but he tries to explain about how you would go to a. To find out about the good cuts of a cow, you'd go to a butcher. But anyway, go check that out.
So for our listeners, is that PG rated?
It's not.
G-rated?
It is not.
Okay. All right. Just wanting to
It is
know what the rating
absolutely
of that
not.
movie
It
is.
is.
We neither endorse or recommend.
But it's hilarious when you think about trying to explain what a fiduciary is. Totally opposite concept, but it's still pretty funny. All right. So anyway, let's get into the next one here. So fees. All right. So people wonder, is it polite? Is it okay? I mean, I want to know how they're going to charge me and all that kind of stuff. But how do you go about doing that?
You wanted to say this, so you start.
Okay. As Craig is looking at me from the microphone, I think the probably the more accurate question is, what services are you providing for the fees that you charge? When you look at fees, you've got an advisory fee. And that is kind of overlaid on top of your accounts.
Okay.
And then you have the fees within the investments themselves, the management fees of the ETFs or the mutual funds. You've got those fees that also add to and bring down your overall returns.
Yeah, that's a
but
good.
what are you getting
point.
for that?
Yeah.
Are you just getting the management? Are you also getting financial planning? Are you getting the estate component? Are you is someone looking at your insurance? Are they basically managing your relationship in a holistic manner and having it all wrapped up into one fee arrangement, and that's based on the AUM. That's the model that we choose here at Maestro,
rather than just being an investment manager.
Right. And we don't nickel and dime. If you do this, it's so much. If you do this, it's so much. No, our asset under management fee incorporates. We're going to be going with you to your estate attorney, making sure that your estate plan is in order, and make sure that those instructions carry through to the accounts we manage. And we also offer the service that will help you with those accounts outside of us.
Let me give you an example. Last week, a lady came to us, and we were going through, and she has some money that we are managing, but she also has some money in annuities and some money at the bank. Now, we took her to the attorney, got the estate plan done. We had a written set of instructions to follow. So I asked the question, are the beneficiaries set up on the annuities right? Well, I've got them going straight to my kids. I'm like, and I pulled up the document because we have a place to show that. And I said, here's what your document instructs you to do. You're supposed to name the trustee of a trust as the beneficiary rather than directly to your kids. Oh. Nobody said anything to me. I said, well, okay, I'm saying something to you. How about the bank? Well, I put my daughter on one of the accounts. I said, well, again, your daughter has power of attorney. She could have done it this way, but, now if you pass away, that's her money. Is that okay with the rest of their siblings? And so not knowing how to do it, we had to go back. I made some phone calls for her, got some things straightened out. But at the end of the day, you need to work with somebody that's going to work for you, go back to the fiduciary standard, and also make sure that all of this stuff that you're doing is not independent of each other, meaning that you're putting a plan together that works for you for all of it, not just, well, my investment stuff's good, but everything else kind of fell through the cracks there.
Right. And we not only work with that, but we work with your CPA as well, depending upon the complexity of your tax situation, making sure that the decisions we suggest in your account, we're going to talk about this in a later show about what you should be doing now about tax planning, but making sure that the decisions of the buys and the sales and the investment work with and for your benefit from a tax standpoint. So we try to create that trusted advisor network with your CPA, your attorney, and us as your financial advisor, that we're all working together for your benefit, not independent decisions being made, which could be contrary and detrimental to your current financial health and then your future health as well.
Yeah, it's a financial team, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's a better question to ask is, I know you're going to charge me a fee. There's no free lunch. But for whatever your fee you're charging me, tell me what it is. But what do I get for that?
What about investment philosophy? Is that important when you sit down and talk with an advisor to say, hey, what's your overarching theme? And does that align with, what I'm looking for, right?
I don't know if people even have their own investment philosophy.
Okay.
I think most people just say, I want a good return, or I want market returns, but I don't want any downsides. I don't know if people can really articulate what their philosophy is.
Well, let's talk about it a second.
Yeah.
Let's look at it. So, what would be some of the qualifiers? Well, some of it would be your age. I mean, if you're 72 years old and you need money out of your IRA, we really shouldn't recommend to you the aggressive portfolio, because you're going to need to access that money, and the volatility could make it either really good if you're taking withdrawals, but could also make it really horrific if the value of the account were going down. So that would be a strategy where we would be more conservative. If you're 35 years old, you've got a good salary, you're putting money into your retirement account every 2 weeks, well, that's aggressive. I mean, you've got a long period of time before that money is going to be needed. If you add in every couple of weeks, you put the same percentage dollar amount in there, and what happens is it will grow better under those circumstances, being more aggressive. But you have to think it through and not just say one size fits all. Other things to consider would be, what if you're using an IRA versus a taxable account. Well, if you were, as an example, in a taxable account, you kind of want to use things that are tax efficient. So those would be more like exchange traded funds and those types of things, because what they do in the fund isn't a tax event. Now, when you sell it, it is, but what you do in the fund is not. The other side is in a mutual fund. At the end of, we're coming up on November, December, and I promise you 90% of those mutual funds are going to have capital gains and income distributions. It'll reduce the share value. And even if you didn't make any money, you probably did, but if you didn't, you'll still see those capital gains and go, I'm paying taxes, but I didn't make any money. So you've got to look at this and say, all right, what is your particular approach? Another thing would be, we have to talk to you about volatility in an account. What's your view of risk? Well, I'm a long-term investor. And then I guarantee you that same person, if the market drops 15, 20%, they're the first one that calls. This thing's down 15%. I'm like, you said. Well, forget what I said. Now I'm saying something different. It's like, okay, so we really have to get to the bottom of how you deal with risk, because if it keeps you up at night, we need to make sure that we minimize the downside and you understand when we are going to act and make sure that we defend at this point. So these are things that as you're looking at your approach, when someone's asking us what we do, there's not a one-size-fits-all. I mean, it would be very easy to be the annuity salesman. I just have this one product. So guess what? Everybody gets that, and that's my strategy. But we're not that, and so we have to customize things to your particular situation.
And your comfort level, too. When you were talking about that, Craig, I was thinking of a client a couple of weeks ago where we had her in a particular strategy where she couldn't go down, but she was going to receive some market appreciation if the market were to go up. And that was fine at the beginning, but then she started thinking about it. And she's like, I really just want guaranteed. I want guaranteed every year a certain amount back that a return. So, there's different ways to create an income plan and a growth plan on your account, but it really has to resonate with the investor. What are they going to hold on to and stay the course? What about a question about asset allocation? So, what asset allocation will you use, or what investment benchmarks do you use? How do you benchmark me, my account? Those types of questions, which are pretty technical questions,
I don't know if I can do it on the radio, but, I can do benchmarks. So, for example, if you were saying, what would we compare to? Well, most people say the market, and immediately they click on the S&P 500, and it says this 500 stocks in the United States, mostly growth style stuff for the weighting on it. Here's what it did. Well, what if you're a conservative person as an investor? Well, you're not going to have all of your money in that. You're just not with me, you're not, because that would contradict what you said you were. You said, I'm conservative, yet you're comparing to a 100% stock portfolio. So it's a different thing. We have to make sure that we line this thing up to where you understand it. If you're saying, I'll take the volatility of the S&P 500, I want all the growth of it, well, we can make that happen. That's easy. As a matter of fact, we can probably do a little better. But if you're saying, no, when this thing goes down, I'm not in for down 27%. If you think back just 2 years ago, 2022, in October of 2022, go look and see where the S&P 500 was. Well, it was double digits. It was close to 30%. And the NASDAQ was beyond that. So that volatility, when it's your money, makes it pretty hard to deal with. When you're looking at a chart and you're looking backwards a year later and going, oh, well, it came back. You forget that there was 2 or 3 years in there where the thing was down. You've got to be careful how you look at this. So those benchmarks, we need to have our comparisons set up. So obviously we would say part of it, if it was in the bond market, we're going to use a bond benchmark like the bond aggregate. If they're large cap, mid cap, and small cap, and all these other things that we typically measure against, the combination of those is something that you should probably be able to compare against. But at the end of the day, a lot of it boils down to where you are from a risk versus reward type of person. And you have to be honest with yourself. When you listen to me or anybody else on the radio or TV, these guys cannot make it work all the time. So you have to understand that if I want the high gains, I've got to be willing to accept the fact that sometimes I could be down 20, 30% in an account. But if you want something that is a more consistent portfolio that says, okay, I'm not going to have to recover from down 20, 30%. I'm just going to keep clicking along. Maybe I'm making 8, 10, 12%, and you can do that on a consistent basis. It'll work out a lot better. It'll work out a lot better for you over time. And you have to decide what you are personally. So I didn't mean to get in the weeds too much there, but it's a hard question because you don't have a straight answer. It'd be nice to say, 20, 40, 60, 40 person, 80, 20 person, asset allocation mix, blah, 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 blah. That's a cop-out. That's what Wall Street sold us to the point to where people say, I'm a 60-40. Well, you're a moderate then, right? No, you're not. You're not going to take a generic return. You want to do better. When the things go down, you want to be better than what that 60-40 did. And when things go up, you want to participate in the markets as well. So why don't we customize something that will fit you much better than just saying, okay, let's slap you in the 60-40 and I'm going to go get me another client.
I think one of the most important questions that you can come to a new relationship with is, how will our relationship work? Because it's not just a point in time where you come in and talk with someone and say, here's my stuff, make it work for me. But they're going to be with you day in, day out, hopefully for the next 20 to 30 years through retirement. So let's talk about how we approach the relationship. First of all, we have a team of people to assist you. So it's not just one person. We have a team of financial advisors. We currently have 4. We have a team of service people. We currently have 3. We have a relationship manager that reaches out to our clients and actually sets time on the calendar for you and the financial advisor to make sure that we're in touch with you. We talk with you on a periodic basis depending upon your needs. It'll be a minimum of once a year to go over your portfolio. Typically, it's every quarter that we're reaching out to you. Or do you have any needs? What's the question? We look at your estate plan on a periodic basis. We look at your risk needs from an insurance basis on a periodic basis. So we go through a full financial planning calendar throughout the year to make sure that as things change, we're aware of that and you get that information and make sure that your plan is working as optimally as possible. We also send information to you in your mailbox, your e-box, social media, good educational materials, not salesmanship type stuff. And we have educational events and social events. So we are in front of our clients on a day in and day out basis, and they have access to us with phone calls and emails and making sure that you have the information you need.
Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you have any questions about what we've discussed, remember, you can get a complimentary financial review with the team at Maestro Wealth Advisors by calling 336-448-1086 or go online to howmoneyworksradio.com for other great resources and ways to reach the team. You can also check the show notes of today's episode for our contact information as well. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app so you never miss an episode. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all the most popular apps. For Craig and Jennifer Moser, I'm Mark Killian. We'll talk to you next time on the How Money Works podcast.
Craig Moser is a financial advisor and certified financial planner. Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through Avantax Affiliated Insurance Agency.